Chapter 4595. AI Ming Ming was speechless when he said that. She bit her lip and said, "I'm going to change." She had only taken a step when Rongyu grabbed her wrist in a forceful manner that was rarely seen. AI Ming Ming was stunned for a moment and then looked at him. Rongyu lowered his voice and said, "As long as it's appropriate." AI Ming Ming bit her lip and nodded. She wanted to change into a sweater skirt and a coat. It was simple and appropriate. Rongyu drove his own car, and AI Ming Ming sat beside him without saying anything. She would occasionally check Weibo. Rongyu said in a low voice as he drove, "If I were you, I wouldn't be checking Weibo now. It must be an article to provoke you." AI Ming Ming put down her phone and looked at Rongyu. "How did you know?" Rongyu was still driving and said indifferently, "Because I'm not as stupid as you." After saying that, he glanced at her with a doting look in his eyes. AI Ming Ming met his gaze and put her hands on her knees, looking a little restrained. After a long time, she said in a low voice, "Why me?" Rongyu sighed as he drove. "Why not you?" AI Ming Ming's lips moved slightly, and she said in a low voice, "Rongyu, I actually don't have any good points." "You do," Rongyu said with certainty. AI Ming Ming let out an ah and looked at him in disbelief. Rongyu said with a smile, "You're good looking." AI Ming Ming was stunned and said in a low voice, "Is that a good point?" Rongyu chuckled. "For a husband, yes." AI Ming Ming was speechless and looked at the road in front of her. Rongyu had always been very calm and didn't say anything. In the end, AI Ming Ming couldn't help but say, "They said on Weibo that I don't dare to come out like a turtle." "Well, sometimes a little." Rongyu nodded in agreement. AI Ming Ming was furious. She glared at him and said, "I came out, okay? I didn't hide." Rongyu just smiled and looked extremely tolerant. After about 20 minutes, his car stopped in front of the red carpet of the premiere, causing a commotion. On one hand, it was because AI Ming Ming was the female lead in the center of the storm, and on the other hand, it was because of Rongyu's halo. Rongyu was now the hottest young screenwriter, and he was very good-looking. He even had a little scandal with Yuan. But no one had expected such a decent person to marry AI Ming Ming. But now they appeared openly. Rongyu's hand was holding AI Ming Ming's. He would not distance himself from her because of her past. Just like he said, they were husband and wife. Husband and wife share weal and woe. They are one. For example, in front of so many eyes and cameras, AI Ming Ming was actually a little timid. She even wanted to retreat a little, but Rongyu wouldn't allow her to retreat. His hand firmly grasped hers, not giving her a chance to break free. He smiled at the media and looked at AI Ming Ming with a gentle gaze, as if there was only one of her in the entire world. Slowly, AI Ming Ming felt relieved. She even smiled slightly. It was a smile that could only be seen when a man accepted and loved her. It was a smile that could only be seen when one was happy. Rongyu held her hand and said in a low voice, "Isn't this good? It's not that hard." Chapter 4596. Updated quickly, AI Ming Ming was a little dazed. After a while, she tilted her head and smiled. "I think so." Rongyu smiled again and did not say anything else. They just accepted the media's interview. The media's questions were very harsh. They did not give AI Ming Ming any face. They were basically saying that a notorious artist like AI Ming Ming did not deserve to be with a young man like Rongyu. AI Ming Ming was a little nervous and angry. However, her nervousness and anger were for Rongyu. She was afraid that he would not be able to accept it. However, Rongyu was very calm. At least, he was much calmer than her. Facing the harsh media, Rongyu smiled. "Today, I am not here as the producer of Twin. I am here because I am Ming Ming's husband. She is great, not only in the movie, but also in real life. I am very grateful to her as my wife. She was my wife in the dark and dark of my life. Ming Ming did not give up on me. She took care of me, and now she has become a part of my life." The crowd was a little moved, because Rongyu said that he had a serious illness and that he might not be able to have children in the future. The media did not say anything. Rongyu's tone was extremely firm. "I did not feel gratitude towards my wife. I truly like and love her. Now, in the future, She will bear all the pain in the past with me. Also, she will not make a comeback and will not take on any more shows because Rong Yu's gaze became affectionate. I could take care of my own woman. Everyone was moved and couldn't say a word. AI Ming Ming was crying. Rong Yu smiled. His voice was unbelievably soft and gentle. Why are you crying? Aren't you usually fierce? AI Ming Ming bit her lips and did not say anything for a long time. At this moment, there was a burst of applause. It was for Rong Yu and Rong Yu's love. Rong Yu reached out and wiped away his wife's tears. Then he smiled. When we got married, I said that we will share weal and woe together. I will protect you forever and stand in front of you. So, there is nothing to be afraid of. When everything comes, I will be there. AI Ming Ming was originally just shedding tears, but now she was crying uncontrollably like a child. No one laughed, not even Rong Yu. He continued to gently wipe away her tears. Finally, he kissed her, declaring their love in front of everyone. Sometimes it is very mysterious, but love comes at the right time. Many female reporters were wiping their tears. Who could be free from mistakes? How many people could be forgiven and receive love like Rong Yu? Although Twin had yet to be decided, AI Ming Ming was already a winner in life. Tonight, there was finally a trending topic about He Huan. Hashtag Rongwalovius ranked first. At the same time, the premiere of Twin had also begun. The box office for the day was almost set, but on the day of 215, Twin and AI Gia's movie had already reached a standstill. Both had more than 50 million. However, Twin had a strong momentum. After an hour of screening, it had a rating of 8. 8 on Dubon and 9. 6 on Maoyan. It was a rare high score in recent years. AI Gia could not sit still anymore. She was in the living room of the high-class villa, talking on the phone while watching the live broadcast on the television. She looked at Yi Huan and Qin Mo's lovey-dovey appearance and AI Ming Ming's blissful smile with Rong Yu's company. If they were all blissful, what about her? Chapter 4597. Memorize. Fast updates. AI Jia gripped her phone so tightly that her knuckles were almost white. She tried her best to hold it in. After a long time, she said in an extremely distorted voice and expression, "Even this little bitch can be happy." Why? Then she smashed a lot of things in the room. Phones, televisions, everything. Smashed to smithereens. With a shattering sound, all the expensive things in the villa were smashed. But AI Jia didn't care. What she cared about was that everyone was happy. What she cared about was that she might be pressed to the floor by He Huan's twin. She would become a laughingstock if a commercial film couldn't beat an art house film. AI Jia panted, her eyes filled with an indescribable melancholy, even more sinister. Just then, a soft cry came from upstairs. She snapped out her trance. Yes, she hadn't lost. She hadn't. The day ended. Twins' box office collection was more than 130 million. But by midnight, the pre-sales had already exceeded 100 million. The expected box office collection of 215 million would be a huge figure of 300 million. This result made everyone look at it, both within and outside the industry. Moreover, Weibo had become a spiritual shareholder. Twins fans kept checking the box office collection results. Of course, there were also those who went to watch it twice or thrice. Other than Qin Mo's promotion, Twin was indeed worthy of such a result. Industry critics said that the filming method was experienced and the editing was superb. Although it was an art house film, the pace was comparable to a suspense film. At the same time, it didn't lose the beauty of an art house film. And the biggest Easter egg in the film was AI Ming Ming's 5-minute performance. That was the best performance AI Ming Ming had ever given in her career. But there was no performance. Everything was just herself. AI Ming Ming's joy and loss when she first arrived in B City, and the disappointment and fear in her eyes when she fell to the bottom of the abyss, were all vividly portrayed by AI Ming Ming. Some veteran internet celebrity fans sighed. They didn't know if Twin was an art house film or an exploration of human nature. Of course, the biggest winners were still the male and female leads. At the end of the premiere, He Huan hugged them and smiled. This should be a film that will bring you many awards. Good luck. Kong Chao also let out a long sigh. He had seen the original film before, and it was already very perfect. However, he did not expect that, after the re-editing, it would be so amazing. His scenes were reduced, but the effect was much better than before. He recognized at a glance that it was Chin Mo's technique. It was a pity that Chin Mo did not become a director. Because of the huge success, Chin Mo held a small celebration party at the suggestion of Chin Mo. The staff and the original lead actors all attended the party. The venue was an exquisite small hall in Lan Yu's Grand Hyatt Hotel. It was very warm in the hall, and everyone was still in their formal wear. However, since they were family, they were very relaxed, and Huan even took off her high heels. Chin Mo leaned against her and whispered, "Mrs. Chin, you are too full of yourself." Huan sat on the sofa and looked up at him. Smiling sweetly, she said, "It's rare." She even picked up a glass of cocktail and took a few sips in a provocative manner. Chin Mo watched as her beautiful lips pressed against the rim of the glass, and then the dark red liquid slid down her little throat. He knew that she did it on purpose, so he leaned closer to her, and his voice suddenly became hoarse. "You did it on purpose, huh?" Chapter 4598. He knew that she did it on purpose, so he leaned closer to her and said in a hoarse voice, "You did it on purpose, huh?" Huan was still smiling sweetly, leaning back on the sofa, looking very relaxed. If it had been before, Chin Mo would never have allowed her to appear in front of others like this. But today everyone was in a good mood, and Huan was in a good mood, especially since they had just had a fight. He wanted to make her happy, and he wanted to please her. So he leaned close to her ear and said in a hoarse voice, "Don't go too far, Mrs. Chin, or else what?" She tilted her head and looked at him. There was a hint of mischief in her eyes, and there was even a little spark in them. Chin Mo's heart was burning. He leaned over and said something, then looked at her meaningfully before going to socialize with the others. Huan was still sitting, thinking about what Mrs. Chin had said. He told her not to get drunk. She insisted on getting drunk, and she wanted him to take care of her, as if she was a baby. Mrs. Chin thought childishly. Since Huan wasn't here, she was the youngest. At this time, she automatically ignored Shunting. AI Ming Ming and Rong Yu also attended. Rong Yu couldn't drink, so AI Ming Ming spent most of the time with him. Later, Chin Mo dragged Rong Yu away, and AI Ming Ming was a little bored by herself, so Huan asked Shunting to call her over. The two unfamiliar women drank a little, so they were much more relaxed, and some of their words became bolder. AI Ming Ming was also drunk, and she said everything she should and shouldn't say. Huan thought it was quite interesting, and she finally understood why Rong Yu liked AI Ming Ming. No, it wasn't like it was love. Later, AI Ming Ming was dragged away by Rong Yu, and they seemed to have gone home. Huan's brain wasn't working well after 2 glasses of wine, so she didn't know where AI Ming Ming was. When she sobered up a little, she was on the balcony of the banquet hall. It was a little cold, but not too cold. Looking outside through a layer of glass because it was late at night and because it was very cold, there was a thin layer of fog in the sky. Huan thought to herself that she and Rong Yu had never fallen in love with each other. They had known each other for many years and seemed to like each other for many years, but she had never thought of bringing him home because she was worried about Chin Mo. She was afraid of Chin Mo, and she knew that Chin Mo would be angry. But at that time, when she was young, she clearly felt that Chin Mo had nothing to do with her. She also thought that maybe it was because she was afraid that if Chin Mo found out, he wouldn't force her to drink the damn red bean soup anymore. Even if he was fierce, he wouldn't be fierce to her. He might find another girl to be fierce to and force her to do all sorts of things. Mrs. Chin's heart was filled with sentiments. She thought that she had always cared about Chin Mo. She cared about him the most, even when she thought she had fallen in love with Rong Yu. She turned around to look for Chin Mo, but when she turned around, Chin Mo was right behind her. His face was handsome, and he had always looked good. There was a touch of gentleness in his eyes that she could read. Huan's heart suddenly warmed up, and he was even a little sad amidst this feeling. It was not for himself, but for Qin Mo. How long had he been behind her? Just like that, they stared at each other in the middle of the night, not saying a word. However, the night was so beautiful. Chapter 4599. Huan's eyes became gentler. Qin Mo finally took a step forward and smiled. Mrs. Qin, I told you that you're too full of yourself. How many glasses did you drink? Usually, she wouldn't look at him like this. She didn't hide it at all. His little princess, Huan, was very proud and never took the initiative. Huan tilted her head and chuckled. Only 2 cups. In the end, he still stepped forward and held her hand. His voice was a few degrees lower. But I think you're drunk. Huan didn't say a word and continued to look at him. Eventually, she placed her little hand on his shoulder and rested her little chin on his shoulder. Her voice was especially soft and gentle. Qin Mo, I want to go home. His heart was also boiling. After a long time, he replied, Okay. He carried her and walked out. Huan only came back to her senses when they were in the car. She looked at Qin Mo and asked, Where's Shunting? They were sitting in the back seat together, and old Zhao was driving. Qin Mo hugged her and said in a low voice, He's only 13. He's long gone to bed. He's not as crazy as you. Oh, Huan replied, then fell into his arms and didn't say anything. Qin Mo could actually feel that she had something on her mind. After a while, he lowered his head and asked, What are you thinking about? Huan shook her head. Nothing. Qin Mo smiled and didn't say much. After all, old Zhao was in the car, and he didn't want to be a joke. Just like that, the car slowly drove back to their old apartment. Huan came back to her senses. Why are we here? Qin Mo carried her out of the car and explained, It's too late. We'll wake Shunting up if we go back. Huan was a little shocked. What kind of reason was that? But it was late at night, and she had drunk a little, so she couldn't resist. She just fell into his arms and listened to his heartbeat. Then, she felt the elevator going straight up. Her heart was beating a little faster. She couldn't tell if it was his or hers. Just when he was at the peak of his emotions, the elevator dinged, and he carried her home. The heater in the apartment had been turned on long ago, so they didn't feel cold. This was probably arranged by Qin Mo in advance. Huan drank a little too much, but she was still thinking that he was actually a very considerate and gentle man. It was up to her to ask for or repay him. When they got home, he wasn't in a hurry to let her sleep, nor did he mention that he wanted a shower. Instead, they sat in the living room and watched a movie. He put on a romantic movie and excitedly brought over a bottle of red wine, pouring 2 glasses for each of them. It was rare for Huan to be so happy. She had been tense for a long time. She looked at him sideways and said, You still want to celebrate? I thought you wanted to take a shower and go to bed. Otherwise, I have to change out of this gown. Qin Mo stretched out his long arms and legs and looked at her sideways. It's quite nice. There's no need to change. Besides, it's not cold at home, right? With that said, he swept her into his arms. His embrace was very warm and indeed not cold. Huan didn't say anything else. She just leaned gently in his arms, holding a glass of wine in her hand, and murmured a toast to the past. He smiled. Accompany me. He said these 3 words casually. In fact, only he knew how unhappy and lonely he had been these past few years. On such a night, he always hoped that someone would accompany him. Huan took a sip of wine and looked at him just like that. Chapter 4600. Huan took a sip of wine and stared at him. Qin Mo just smiled. Huan suddenly felt sad for him. She lowered her voice and said, Qin Mo, it hasn't been easy for you all these years, has it? Qin Mo was probably in a good mood. He teased her and smiled. It's not bad. At least there's someone in your heart. Huan glanced at him. I thought you had a bunch of people in your heart. Qin Mo smiled and hugged her shoulders. Mrs. Qin, I'm not as loving as you think. As he said that, he seemed to have thought of something. He said in a low voice, How about you? Have you been good all these years? Huan broke free from him and sat on the other side. Then, she said in a low voice, I don't know if it's good or not, but I've been struggling. Should I come back? Will there be someone else by your side when you come back? Even though their relationship had been extremely bad all these years, Huan could still vaguely feel that he was in her heart. After all, they had been husband and wife. After he Juan said that, she stared at him. There was something that could be called water in her eyes. It wasn't tears or crying. It was just emotional. Although they were together, they still missed out on many years. They had missed out on Chin Mo and he Juan's best years. Mrs. Chin wasn't usually so emotional, but she drank wine today. She was very, very sad. She was extremely sad. She leaned her head on the sofa and stared at the wine in the glass in her hand. She said very softly, Chin Mo, I want to go back to the past. If I can go back, I will definitely love you well, even more than I do now. Chin Mo knew that she had drunk too much. Otherwise, she wouldn't have said these words even if she was beaten to death. However, he still remained calm and accompanied her. He just secretly recorded everything she said so that he wouldn't be afraid that she wouldn't admit it in the future. Chin Mo smiled. Mrs. Chin, it's 2019 now. Don't be so emotional. We are together now, okay? She really drank a little too much. Normally, she wouldn't act coquettishly and be so unreasonable. Her petite face was a little tipsy as she laid on the sofa and whispered, but I missed out on a lot. As she spoke, she straightened her body and reached out to rub his face. Mrs. Chin's eyes were full of girlish love. She bit her lips and said in a soft and sweet voice, But Chin Mo, I missed your best time. She missed him when he was 20, when he was 30, the best time of a man's life. Used to be angry with him, used to be Cold War with him, and separation. He Juan was drunk. She collapsed on his shoulder and said sadly, Chin Mo, I can't even tell if it was me or you who was cruel all these years. We've actually been separated for so many years. Chin Mo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She had drunk too much, and yet she kept thinking about this. However, his heart softened. He still couldn't let go of Juan. She loved him so much in her heart. Mr. Chin is also full of himself. Chin Mo's gaze was gentle as he looked at his wife. She was rarely so cute. He had suffered enough from her ever since they were young, and tonight, he seemed to be able to get back at her with interest. Chin Mo couldn't help but touch He Juan's face. Of course you're cruel. You're a cruel little thing who abandoned your husband and children. Chapter 46:01. Chin Mo couldn't help but touch He Juan's face with his fingers. Of course you're cruel. You're a cruel little thing who abandoned your husband and children. After saying that it wasn't enough, he pinched her cheek harshly. He Juan let out a strange cry. Her temperament was gone, as if she had returned to her teenage years. Chin Mo stared at her for a while and suddenly said, You're only 33 years old. He Juan, I was 32 when I married you. And now he was 40. Chin Mo thought that he was actually 47 years older than her. He suddenly worried that she would think that he was old, so he pinched her chin gently. Do you think that I'm old, huh? He looked quite serious. He Juan was speechless. She stared at him for a long time. Chin Mo, you're so boring. Chin Mo tightened his grip, and she let out a strange cry. Later, she was still tired, but Chin Mo didn't let her sleep and only let her lean on him. He Juan leaned against his chest, so sleepy that her eyes were closed. Her voice was as innocent as a little lamb. Chin Mo, what's wrong with you today? Chin Mo looked down at the little girl in his arms. He had liked the little girl for many years. His heart softened, and he murmured, He Juan, this is a once-in-a-lifetime night. She had said a lot to him tonight. He was very happy and wanted to say and do something, but in the end, he just wanted to spend the night alone with her. He wouldn't be lonely tonight with He Juan's company. He Juan fell asleep in his arms. Chin Mo looked at the time. It was 3:30 in the morning. He chuckled. She had endured long enough. The heater was good, but it was still nighttime. He Juan squeezed in his arms, looking very cute and coquettish. Chin Mo took the coat from the back of the sofa and put it on her. He adjusted his body and let her fall into his arms comfortably. On the coffee table, there was still a little wine left in the goblet. It swayed gently, exuding a charming color in the night. Chin Mo suddenly didn't want to waste this night, this fine wine, and He Juan's sudden gentleness. He reached for the glass and drank it in turn, drinking with this gentle night, drinking with tonight's affection, drinking with the little fellow in his arms. Everything was so wonderful, so wonderful that he almost didn't want to sleep. But when his hand touched her face and saw the faint bruise under her eyes, he still hesitated and flinched. In the end, he could only sigh and let her go. Having a hangover and staying up late was extremely difficult, especially when Juan's health wasn't good. She woke up from her dream and sat up. It was already 11 o'clock in the morning, and the sun was shining brightly. Juan scratched her hair, feeling a headache coming on. Then, as if remembering something, she grabbed her phone and scrolled through the Cat Eye box office rankings. To her surprise, she saw that Twin was at the top of the box office today. As of now, it had already grossed 150 million yuan. Meanwhile, AIG's commercial film, which was currently in production, had less than 20 million yuan and was only 130 million yuan. Juan rubbed her eyes. She couldn't believe that she had really surpassed it. At this time, Chinamo happened to come over. Juan raised her eyes and looked at him eagerly. Her voice was like that of a little sheep. Chinamo, you've topped the box office. Chinamo walked over in a formal suit. He leaned over and kissed her. There was a hint of a smile in his voice. Isn't it normal? I did it myself. Juan snorted. You're very smelly now. Chapter 46:02. Chinamo laughed and said in a lower voice, Be more elegant. Juan looked at him for a while, and there was a trace of moisture in her eyes. It was a unique expression of someone who had just woken up. Chinamo couldn't help kissing her eyelids again. He looked up and said, What do you want to ask? Juan put her arms around his neck and said, How much box office did you earn? She dragged her voice and said coquettishly, How much did you earn in the box office? Chinamo lowered his head and said in a hoarse voice, Don't you have confidence in yourself? Juan's eyes widened, as if she couldn't believe it. After a while, she asked him softly, Chinamo, do you mean that the data is real? Of course. There was a hint of a smile in Chinamo's eyes. Don't you have confidence in yourself? Don't you have confidence in your husband? Juan glanced at him again, but she didn't have time to argue with him because the surprise came too fast. She just couldn't believe it. After a long time, she bit her lips and said, You're not trying to make me happy, are you? It wasn't like he hadn't spent a fortune to make her happy before. Chinamo chuckled. I think I've made myself very clear, Mrs. Chin. Congratulations on your talent. Your husband is perfect, and you have a great crew. That's why this film is so popular. He paused and said, It's estimated that the box office will be more than 2 billion. Juan was a little proud, but she didn't get too full of herself. She asked again, How did that happen? Chinamo smiled and said, Opportunities are always given to those who are prepared. Juan continued, But I wasn't prepared. AIG's attack caught me off guard. Also, about AI Ming Ming, I was completely dumbfounded. When she spoke, she was like a little girl. Chinamo couldn't stand it and rolled his eyes. But you found yourself a good husband many years ago, didn't you? Juan stared at him, but there was a smile in her eyes. Chinamo didn't make a sound. He let her stare at him and let her hug him. Finally, the smile in her eyes became even more obvious. She bit her lower lip and said, Yeah, it seems like it, Chinamo. It seems that my talent is not as good as my foresight. Chinamo pinched her little face. I picked you, Mrs. Chin. Juan's eyes seemed to be filled with countless stars. That's not right. Chinamo, he immediately changed his tone and spoke in a friendly tone. What did I do wrong? Tell me. Juan was a little shy, but she was really happy today. She didn't want to let go of him, not now, but in the future. She blushed at her own shameful thoughts. After a long time, she stuttered, Actually, I used to like you too. Chinamo was amused, but he pretended to be surprised. Mrs. Chin, are you confessing your love to me? Juan snorted. You're laughing at me. I wouldn't dare. He was talking to her in that damned tone of voice again, and that damned Juan was a sucker for it. She looked at him weakly and couldn't speak for a long time. She refused to let go of him. Chinamo smiled. Let's have a meeting in the morning. Juan exclaimed and was hit by Chinmo's finger. What are you thinking, Mrs. Chin? I'm talking about the meeting at King Entertainment. As for anything else, don't even think about it today. Chapter 46:03. Memorize. Updated quickly. Hee-Hwan exclaimed as Chin Mo tapped her with his finger. What are you thinking about, Mrs. Chin? I was talking about going to King Entertainment for a meeting. As for anything else, don't even think about it today. Don't even think about it. It's a sin to even think about it. This was what Chin Mo had been saying to her recently. Hee-Hwan felt gloomy when she heard that. Her little thoughts were shattered by him. She felt that Chin Mo didn't love her as much anymore. Yes, he didn't love her anymore. He didn't coax her anymore. All he cared about was the movie and the box office. When she complained in a petulant manner, Chin Mo laughed. I'm with you every day and you despise me. Now that I'm busy with my career, you still despise me. How can there be such logic in this world? Huh? Hee-Hwan retreated and he hugged her gently. He teased her for a while before letting her go. He said regretfully, I'm going to the meeting. Hee-Hwan glared at him. Chin Mo laughed. Breakfast? No, lunch is ready. A pig who sleeps until noon. Hee-Hwan widened her eyes and glared at him. Chin Mo laughed again. All right. Even a pig is a cute little pig, okay? Hee-Hwan pulled up the blanket and lay down again. Then I'll just be a pig. Chin Mo gently pulled the blanket off her face. He said in a doting tone, eat something and go back to the villa later. Shen-Ting is still at home. You have to take care of the child's feelings. Hee-Hwan was about to explode. He was the one who insisted on staying in the condominium, but now he was blaming him. How could there be logic in this world? Chin Mo read the meaning in her eyes and chuckled. I'm the boss in the family. I'm the logic. Hee-Hwan was so angry that she kicked him twice. Chin Mo smiled again before he left. When Hee-Hwan was left alone, she laid on the bed, feeling surreal. Because Twin was really the first in the box office. After giving it some thought, she immediately logged onto a certain platform and realized that the total screening schedule for the next 3 days had started to change. Initially, Twin only had an average screening schedule of 25%, but now it had increased to more than 30%, the same as AIG's new film. Hee-Hwan thought that if the box office and reputation of Twin improved, it would definitely crush AIG's new film in the future. She really didn't expect the effect to be so good. She couldn't help but read the movie reviews again. Then, she got up to eat something and drove back to the villa to watch a movie with Shen-Ting. She had been busy yesterday, so she didn't have much time to watch the movie. Now that she was sitting in the cinema, she could truly feel Chin Mo's amazing editing skills. He really was a genius. If he became a director, he would definitely be famous all over the world. However, he was a businessman, and he had to manage such a huge business empire. He had no time to play around. Hee-Hwan wore a mask when she went out, and so did Shen-Ting. To Shen-Ting, the downside of becoming famous overnight was that girls would smile sweetly at him wherever he went. There were girls ranging from 10-year-old girls to 50-year-old aunties, which troubled him quite a bit. However, as he grew older, Shen-Ting became like the other men in the Chin family. He kept strangers away and gave off an unapproachable vibe. Of course, that was except for Hee-Hwan. At that moment, Shen-Ting was sitting in the cinema, surrounded by darkness. He couldn't help but take off his mask and whispered, "It's a little cold in here. Annie, I'll go get you a cup of hot milk tea." Although he called Hee-Hwan Annie, and Hee-Hwan could indeed be his mother at 33 years old, she was still very young and wasn't even as tall as him. Chapter 4604. Although he called Hee-Hwan Annie, and Hee-Hwan was 33 years old and could be his mother, Hee-Hwan was very small and was not even as tall as him. Shen-Ting felt that Hee-Hwan and Hee-Hwan needed to be taken care of. He and his uncle were men, and it was their responsibility to take care of the weak. Whenever he went out with Hee-Hwan, he would swipe his card, and Hee-Hwan would let him do it. She treated him like a little adult, which was what Shen-Ting liked. In fact, after he entered the Chin family, except for the 1 million Chin Mo deposited into his account in the first month, he refused Chin Mo's financial support. He used the money to invest, and it was enough for his own use. Besides the expenses for himself and Hee-Hwan, he would sometimes invite Hee-Hwan to travel abroad. When Shen-Ting was working, the 1 million had accumulated to tens of millions. When he finished speaking, Hee-Hwan nodded. All right. She had been sitting there for an hour and felt cold. Shen-Ting went out to get some fresh air. Soon, he came back with the things he bought. He opened the lid and handed it to Yi-Huan. Naturally, Yi-Huan took a sip and felt warm from the bottom of her heart to the bottom of her body. From the bottom of her heart, she truly felt that Shun-Ting was a good person, and so was Yi Xiangnan. However, Xiangnan was born into a powerful family and was not willing to compromise on many things. On the other hand, Shun-Ting was a very tolerant boy and did not lack integrity. From the bottom of her heart, she liked Shun-Ting. Maybe because she was a woman, she hoped that Yi-Huan could live a good life, while Qinemo was more willing to follow Yi-Huan's wishes. As Yi-Huan was thinking about this, Qinmo's call came in. She glanced at it, hung up, and sent him a WeChat message. "Mrs. Qin, you're watching a movie with a man. How did you know?" Yi-Huan thought for a moment and added, "He is young, good-looking, and 100 times more considerate. It seems that Mrs. Qin is not going home tonight. Don't you want to confess who your adulterer is? I'm going to bring the adulterer home." Yi-Huan typed word by word, smiling as he typed. He could imagine how helpless Qinemo was on the other side. At this moment, Shun-Ting suddenly leaned over and asked, "Is that uncle?" How could Shun-Ting see such news? Yi-Huan's hand shook, and the P-30 he had just bought fell to the ground. He picked it up and saw that the screen was broken. She was speechless and couldn't say anything for a long time. Shun-Ting was also stunned. He wanted to say something, but Yi-Huan spoke first. "Let's go buy a cell phone and eat out." Shun-Ting agreed. Then, he ignored everyone and continued watching the movie. President Qin was left in suspense, so no one paid attention to him. However, after the movie ended, Yi-Huan and Shun-Ting ran into some trouble. She was recognized when she walked out of the theater, and with Shun-Ting by her side, it was hard not to attract attention. The fans screamed and swarmed over, asking for Yi-Huan's autograph. Although Yi-Huan was the director, she was very pretty. In the fans' hearts, she was the leading actress. Yi-Huan signed about 10 autographs before she couldn't take it anymore. Not only the fans of Twin, but also the fans of AI Gia's movie also asked for Yi-Huan's autograph. They didn't even want to watch AI Gia's movie anymore. The chaotic scene was captured on video, including the deserted entrance to AI Gia's movie, the scene where Yi-Huan and Shun-Ting walk side by side, and the scene where Shun-Ting shielded Yi-Huan with his thin body. It immediately became the #1 trending topic on Weibo. Chapter 4605. The scene of Shun-Ting shielding Yi-Huan with his skinny body became the #1 trending topic on Weibo. Hashtag Twin Director, Yi-Huan's new love little puppy. The title was sensational, and the content was obviously defamatory. It was obviously Aijia's work. However, no one cared because Shun-Ting was a child of the Qin family, and it was normal for Yi-Huan to appear with him. Yi-Huan even brought her new love to buy a phone and was recognized. She even brought her new love to the restaurant and reported to the head of the family. Qinemo said that he would come over immediately and let them eat first. They couldn't eat with masks on, right? Yi-Huan and Shun-Ting were recognized again. Fortunately, they were in a high-class restaurant, and the people were more polite. They wouldn't be shot in the face. Yi-Huan and Shun-Ting slowly stopped minding it, and so did Shun-Ting. They ordered 2 big meals. Shun-Ting looked at Yi-Huan and smiled. "Auntie, can you finish all of them?" Yi-Huan took a sip of water. "Why do you ask?" Shun-Ting looked down and said as he ordered, "Because you are very thin." As soon as Yi-Huan heard that, she knew that Shun-Ting had listened to Qinemo and started to watch over her. She didn't expose him, but she purposely enjoyed her meal. Well, she really liked Shun-Ting. If she were 20 years younger and grew up with Shun-Ting, Qinemo probably wouldn't have anything to do with her anymore. What could a 13-year-old Qinemo do? He only bullied her. He was nowhere near as considerate as Shun-Ting. Yi-Huan was like a mother-in-law who was more satisfied with her son-in-law. She also felt that Qinemo had arranged it well. Shun-Ting came over early and not only took care of Yi-Huan in the future, but he was also taking care of her now. Thinking about it, it was worth it. Yi-Huan didn't feel that she had lost her integrity by following Qinemo. As they ate, a photo was taken and posted on Weibo. Yi-Huan saw it, and so did Shun-Ting. Shun-Ting asked Yi-Huan, "What should we do?" The great director ate his steak and drank a mouthful of aperitif before slowly saying such big words. Your uncle isn't blind. Let him handle it. Otherwise, what's the point of having a man? Shinting actually felt that it made sense. Meanwhile, in King Entertainment conference room, all the middle and upper management had secretly swiped the CEO's green hat. Of course, they knew it was Shun Ting, a 13-year-old child. Even if he was a puppy, he was still too young. Who knew which blind person had written it? Seriously, he didn't even let Kid off. At the end of the meeting, Chin Mo asked Secretary He as he walked, "Did you find out who wrote that article?" Secretary He was a shrewd man. He didn't want his boss to think that he already knew about this, so he pretended not to know. CEO Chin is referring to. Chin Mo rolled his eyes at her and said in a low voice, "It's about He Huan and Shun Ting." Secretary He Huan had a look of realization on her face. That it might have been AI Jia. The word might was commendable. No matter how smart Secretary He Huan was, she could tell that President Chin treated AI Jia differently. There were no romantic feelings between them, but there was something else. But she couldn't ask or say it out loud. Otherwise, she would lose her head. Chin Mo glanced at her again and instructed, "Write up about the case of AI Jia's crew stealing the box office. Make it the top trending topic. We must have evidence." Chapter 4606. Remember, Chin Mo glanced at her again before instructing, "Write up a report about AI Jia's crew stealing the box office. Make it the top trending topic. We must have evidence." He wouldn't suppress her private affairs either. That would be too deliberate and would lower his status. AI Jia had tried her best to defame He Huan for the sake of the box office. He had taken drastic measures to make it impossible for her to continue. Honestly speaking, Chin Mo had lost his patience with AI Jia. He even wanted her to disappear forever. He had the ability to do so, but he had always tolerated her. However, AI Jia wasn't satisfied and couldn't see the situation clearly. Chin Mo was in the midst of contemplating, so his expression didn't look too good. Secretary He was a little shocked. She had never seen President Chin show such an expression. She couldn't help but remind him, "President Chin." Chin Mo snapped out of his trance and lowered his voice. "Just do as I say. We'll talk about the rest later." Secretary He was stunned. There was something else? It seemed like AI Jia had offended President Chin. At one point, everyone in King Entertainment had thought that AI Jia was President Chin's mistress. But President Chin was deeply in love with Director He. But now, Secretary He wasn't so sure about the intensity of his hatred. Secretary He hesitated again and again. This veteran couldn't help but ask, "President Chin, is AI Jia still in contact with him?" Chin Mo was about to leave, but he turned to look at her. His expression was extremely dark. He glared at her. "What are you talking about? There's nothing going on between me and AI Jia." Secretary He didn't think much of it. If there wasn't anything going on, why did he have to hold back? Of course, Chin Mo could see the mockery in Secretary He's eyes. He said coldly, "If you keep looking at me like that, you don't have to come to work tomorrow. Also, don't talk too much in front of He Huan." Chin Mo turned to leave as he said that. Really, were the secretaries nowadays so worrisome? They were so gossipy. Some things even needed the boss to remind them. Secretary He stomped his foot behind him. "Oomph. You're obviously trying to hide something. Who would believe you if you said there was nothing going on?" Chin Mo went straight to the parking lot. After locating the car, he drove straight to the restaurant. At the moment, He Huan and Shun Ting were enjoying their meal in the restaurant, completely unaffected by Weibo. Anyway, it didn't change anything. She would be a moron if she said that Shun Ting was someone that her little puppy trusted. After He Huan finished the aperitif, Shun Ting expressed his opinion. "I'm not 18 yet, so I don't have a driver's license." In fact, He Huan didn't have to answer because Chin Mo would be here soon. However, she still asked Shun Ting, "Do you know how to drive?" Shun Ting said conservatively, "I can't go on the road." Because he wasn't 18 years old yet. As He Huan ate her steak, she said casually, "What's the point of being so outstanding? Really, these kids are so annoying." Can't they give the adults a way out? Shinting laughed and said in a low voice, I know it naturally. I didn't go out of my way to learn. It's actually very simple. He rambled on, and Huan couldn't take it anymore. Shinting, this brat, couldn't understand the pain of someone who had failed several subjects. Back then, she couldn't drive even after getting her driver's license. Chinemo sat beside her for 2 years before she finally got her driver's license. Director, he felt that he was being looked down upon again. Chapter 4607. Chinemo glanced at her again before instructing, write up a report about AIG's crew stealing the box office. Make it the top trending topic. We must have evidence. He wouldn't suppress her private affairs either. That would be too deliberate and would lower his status. AIGA had tried her best to defame Huan for the sake of the box office. He had taken drastic measures to make it impossible for her to continue. Honestly speaking, Chinemo had lost his patience with AIGA. He even wanted her to disappear forever. He had the ability to do so, but he had always tolerated her. But AIGA wasn't satisfied and couldn't see the situation clearly. Chinmo's expression didn't look too good. Secretary, he was a little shocked. She had never seen President Qin look like this. She couldn't help but remind him, President Qin. Chinemo snapped out of his trance and said in a low voice, just do as I say. We'll talk about the rest later. Secretary, he was stunned. There was something else? It seemed like AIGA had offended President Qin. At one time, King Entertainment had thought that AIGA was President Qin's mistress, but President Qin was deeply in love with Director He. But now, Secretary, he wasn't so sure about the intensity of his hatred. Secretary, he hesitated again and again. This veteran couldn't help but ask, President Qin, is AIGA still in contact with him? Chinemo was about to leave, but now he turned to look at her. His expression was dark as he glared at her. What are you talking about? There's nothing going on between me and AIGA. Secretary, he didn't think much of it. If there wasn't anything going on, why did he have to hold back? Of course, Chinemo could see the mockery in Secretary's eyes. He said coldly, don't come to work tomorrow if you keep looking at me like that. Also, don't talk too much in front of Huan. Chinemo turned to leave as he said that. Really, were all secretaries these days so worrisome? They were so gossipy. Some things even needed the boss to remind them. Secretary, he stomped his foot behind him. You're obviously trying to hide something. Who would believe you if you said there was nothing going on? Chinemo went straight to the parking lot. After locating the car, he drove straight to the restaurant. At the moment, Huan and Shunting were enjoying their meal in the restaurant, completely unaffected by Weibo. Anyway, it didn't change anything. She would be a moron if she said that Shunting was someone that her little puppy trusted. After Huan finished the aperitif, Shunting expressed his opinion. I'm not 18 yet, so I don't have a driver's license. In fact, Huan didn't have to answer, because Chinemo would be here soon. However, she still asked Shunting, do you know how to drive? Shunting said conservatively, I can't go on the road, because he wasn't 18 years old yet. As Huan ate her steak, she said casually, what's the point of being so outstanding? Really, these kids are so annoying. Can't they give the adults a way out? Shunting chuckled and lowered his voice. I learned it naturally. I didn't go out of my way to learn it. It's actually very simple. After that, Huan couldn't take it anymore. Shunting, this brat, couldn't understand the pain of someone who had failed several subjects. Back then, she couldn't drive even after getting her driver's license. Chinemo sat beside her for 2 years before she finally got her driver's license. Chapter 4608. Chinemo nodded in understanding, his voice carrying a hint of laughter. Yes. You're right. Huan stared at him, her eyes gleaming. There was something that only a husband and wife could understand. Chinmo's eyes darkened. He glanced at her quietly, his meaning unclear. He sat down next to Huan. Shunting helped him order food. After all, they had lived together for a few days. Shunting was a meticulous person, so he had a good grasp of Chinmo's appetite. Chinemo was very satisfied with this. He felt that this little guy was very considerate and would be a good husband in the future. While they were waiting for the food, AI Gia's voice was cold. Impossible. It's impossible. My crew didn't steal the box office at all. When she spoke, her lips were pale and she couldn't stop trembling. It was obvious that she was really panicking. After a while, she stared at Qin Mo and He Huan and narrowed her eyes. Did you do it, Qin Mo? Or did you do it, He Huan? No one paid attention to her. AI Jia was furious. She bit her lip and looked around. There were already many people looking at them. She had already lost her composure. She couldn't embarrass herself anymore. She knew that she had fallen into someone else's trap, but there was nothing she could do. She could only take the blame. The box office was Qin Mo's doing. His move was really too sinister. AI Jia didn't have time to stay here. She couldn't afford to lose face here. There were many things waiting for her to deal with. When she turned to leave, Qin Mo's voice came from behind her. It was so cold that it was like ice. If I were you, I wouldn't use the same method twice. Miss AI, you should know that my tolerance is not very good. You should know when to stop. AI Jia stood there, her body a little stiff. After a long time, she walked out in a straight line. She was always proud. After AI Jia left, Qin Mo acted as if nothing had happened. Coincidentally, the food arrived and they had finished eating. He was eating alone. He Huan gently sipped her aperitif. Qin Mo only frowned when he saw this, but he didn't say anything. However, He Huan interrogated him while tasting the aperitif. Did you tamper with the box office? Qin Mo ate the food gracefully before answering her. Do you think I'm that kind of person? He Huan answered directly. Qin Mo smiled. Do you think this isn't good? He Huan's voice was a little weak. Not bad. Qin Mo smiled again. That's good. It means that we share the same view. Shinting couldn't help but cough. Qin Mo had really refreshed his worldview. Qin Mo looked at him again. Shinting, do you think it's not good? Of course, to cultivate shamelessness, one had to start from a child. It was just that he didn't know if Shinting could do it now. Shinting immediately said, it's only right to use the necessary means. Qin Mo nodded with satisfaction and continued to eat the rest of the steak. He Huan and Shinting looked at each other and understood each other. Qin Mo kept his head down. At this time, he wiped his lips and said in a very calm voice, why did you make eye contact when I didn't know? He Huan played dumb. Did I? She looked at Shinting again. Shinting, do you think so? Shinting shook his head. I don't think so. He Huan was very satisfied. She said to Qin Mo, no. Qin Mo smiled and pinched her face. You've learned to be bad after drinking a little. I'll teach you a lesson when we get back. As he spoke, he dragged her up and helped her put on her coat. Chapter 4609. He Huan bit her lip and looked at him. It was like a girl's dream. Shinting, who was at the side, felt uneasy again. He had had enough of the public display of affection every day. When they got back, they sat in Qin Mo's car. He Huan sat beside him and chatted about the movie. She was still not sure if she had really squeezed out the commercial movies, and she seemed to be very relaxed about it. Qin Mo said calmly as he drove, it's long past the era of finding a famous director and a few A-list actors to produce a blockbuster. Now, we have to rely on word of mouth. He looked ahead intently and then teased He Huan. Director, he has been discovering overseas that you don't have a good understanding of the domestic movie market. It's 2019, and the domestic audience's taste is no longer what it used to be. The era of young male idols is over, and the audience needs something with depth. Twin fits the bill. I can only say that this era needs it, and of course, we will need more content in the future. Only with good content will there be a market. He Huan glanced at him. You seem to be making me out to be a layman. President Qin, don't forget that my previous movies were not only released overseas, but also in China. Qin Mo laughed. Yeah. Director, I want to ask you about the box office. It's elixir overseas, but it's poison in China, right? He was so merciless that He Huan was about to explode and stare at him. Qin Mo laughed again, very happily. Why, not convinced? You've filmed 6 movies, but they don't even add up to 1 billion yuan domestically. Actually, I'm embarrassed. If I go out, people will say, President Qin, isn't it a waste to arrange so many screenings for director He? King Entertainment had many cinema chains. Every time Hehuan's movie was released, Qin Mo would arrange many screenings for her like a bootlicker. However, Hehuan's movie was really not acclimatized in China. Actually, he wasn't trying to discourage her. If he hadn't edited it this time and used the original version, she would probably have lost to AI Jia. Even if AI Jia's film was a typical commercial failure, Hehuan still couldn't beat it. However, Qin Mo was a very smart man. Of course, he wouldn't say these words to his little darling. After he said that, Hehuan reached out and punched him a few times. Qin Mo smiled and continued driving. Half an hour later, the car stopped in front of the villa. As soon as she got out of the car, a little person rushed over and hugged her. Mom! Hehuan was a little surprised, but she still happily hugged the little fellow. Hehuan was especially coquettish in her arms, rubbing her little face. Hehuan squatted down. Why are you back so soon? I miss Mommy, Hehuan said sweetly. Hehuan nodded and kissed her. Mommy missed you too. Just then, Hehuan saw Shenting. She turned around and hugged his leg. I miss Big Brother too. Shenting didn't correct her and let her call him Big Brother. Then he gently lifted her up with both hands. Hehuan hugged his neck and kissed his cheek, calling him Big Brother affectionately. Shenting smiled and carried her towards the entrance of the villa. At the entrance of the villa, a thin and slender figure stood there, looking at them calmly. Hehuan's little body moved. She wanted to say something, but didn't. Chapter 46:10. At the entrance of the villa, a slim and slender figure stood there, looking at them indifferently. Hehuan's little body moved. She wanted to say something, but she didn't. Yi Xiangnan, who was standing there, didn't say anything either. He just greeted Qin Mo and Hehuan, stepped into the night, and got into a black limousine. Hehuan, who was in Shenting's hand, called out in a crisp voice, Brother Xiangnan, I will miss you too. Yi Xiangnan, dressed in black, was already sitting in the back seat of the car. He was about to close the door. When he heard her call him, his hand paused, and he looked in her direction. The driver asked softly, Young Master Xiangnan, do you want to start the car? Yi Xiangnan said calmly, Wait. He leaned against the back seat again and said softly, This little idiot. She wanted to go home, saying that she missed her mother. He had prepared for an English debate for a month, but when he sent her back, she threw herself into Shenting's arms. This was unacceptable for the arrogant Yi Xiangnan, but he couldn't do anything about it. He wanted to let go, but he couldn't bear to. So he could only torture himself like this. Just like at this moment, he quietly watched her in the arms of another person. She was too young to know what feelings were, and he couldn't get angry even if he wanted to. If he had to be angry, he could only be angry at himself. Hehuan looked at him, wanting to cry. At this moment, Hehuan didn't know that her behavior was bad. It was just that it wasn't obvious. Shenting put her down. He was very tolerant of her. After all, Hehuan was still young, and Shenting wanted her to be happy. When he liked someone, he wanted her to be happy. So at this moment, Shenting put Hehuan down. Yi Xiaonan's car door was still open. Hehuan ran over and threw herself into Yi Xiaonan's arms. Yi Xiangnan still didn't have much of an expression on his face. Hehuan was in his arms, and his gaze met Shenting's. They were both teenagers, but one was deep and the other was indifferent. He was equally outstanding, and his future was immeasurable. At such a time, Yi Xiangnan held Hehuan in his arms and had an urge to take her away. But if he did that, he would lose. Even if Hehuan went back with him, Uncle Qin Mo would probably not agree. Yi Xiangnan would be eliminated. If Shenting could let go, so could he. So no matter how unwilling he was, Yi Xiangnan still put Hehuan down. The young Hehuan didn't know what was going on. She said happily, I'll go see Big Brother Xiangnan in a few days. Yi Xiangnan stepped out of the black limousine and reached out to touch the little girl in the night. He said okay, but he didn't say that he probably wouldn't be able to come out after going to school. He would have to receive this kind of education for the next 3 years, and he would only be able to see her 2 or 3 times a year. And for these 3 years, Shenting would be the one accompanying her. Yi Xiangnan didn't want to let go, but his pride and self-esteem didn't allow him to. Moreover, she was only 7 years old. What did she know? Finally, he let go of her and carried her to Qin Mo, handing her over to Qin Mo. Qin Mo was also satisfied with Yi Xiangnan's actions. He couldn't help it. His daughter was too cute, so the boys who wanted to pursue her were all outstanding. He was dazzled. President Qin was also quite shameless. Chapter 46:11. Yi Xiangnan put down Yi Huan and looked at her deeply. Yi Huan moved her mouth and wanted to say something. Silly girl. Yi Xiangnan reached out and touched her hair, then murmured, "If you want to wear a dress, then wear it." Yi Huan probably felt his emotions, so she shook her head and still looked pitiful. Yi Xiannan smiled again. Her smile was a little bitter and helpless. Uncle Qin really gave him a difficult problem. In fact, he could really ignore it or even give up, but he couldn't give up now. There was even a trace of pain in Yi Xiangnan's eyes. Qin Mo and Yi Huan could understand it, and so could Shun Ting. Shun Ting could see that Yi Xiangnan liked Yi Huan. It was not as simple as two innocent lovers, but the feeling of a man who liked a woman. It was the same as Shun Ting. Shun Ting's eyes fell on Yi Xiangnan's face, and then Yi Xiangnan also looked at him. The two boys' eyes met, and neither of them gave way. Sparks were ignited. However, Yi Xiangnan still left. He got into the black limousine and slowly disappeared into the night. Qin Mo handed Yi Huan to Shun Ting. "Take care of her. I have something to discuss with your aunt." Shun Ting nodded and carried Yi Huan upstairs. The little Yi Huan lay on his shoulder, facing the direction where Yi Xiangnan disappeared. Qin Mo smiled. "I didn't know that our daughter had the potential to be a scumbag. Look at how infatuated those two boys are." Yi Huan didn't dare to flatter him. She glanced at him and said, "If that's the case, then it must be your bad genes." As she spoke, she was about to go upstairs, yawning and looking very sleepy. Qin Mo followed behind her. When they reached the bedroom, he reached out to grab her and pushed her against the door. Yi Huan was pinned down by him. She struggled but failed. She glared at him. Qin Mo easily restrained her and said with a smile, "You just said that you inherited my bad genes." "Mrs. Qin, what bad genes do you think I have? Scum?" Yi Huan knew he was up to no good, so she bit her lip and refused to speak, because what he said next wasn't anything good. Qin Mo looked at her and chuckled. "You seem to have learned something." Yi Huan continued to ignore him. Qin Mo chuckled. "Why aren't you saying anything? Are you feeling guilty?" Yi Huan didn't say a word. Qin Mo used one hand to pinch her chin and chuckled. "Then let me say it. Let's see if I'm right. Our little Mrs. Qin is the scumbag. She likes this and that, right?" Yi Huan bit her lip. "I didn't. No. You didn't like Rong Yu, huh?" President Qin interrogated. Yi Huan bit her lip and couldn't say anything for a long time, because it was the truth. She was silent. Qin Mo chuckled. "Why don't you say anything? Didn't you say that you're not a scumbag?" Yi Huan stared at him and patted his hand. "I want to sleep. You're just avoiding the question." Qin Mo smiled gently. He knew that she was really tired. He felt that he was like a Buddha now. He was only 40 years old, in the prime of his life, and his wife was at home. What made him so Buddha? What kind of brilliance was this? But he always spoiled her. When she said that she was tired and wanted to sleep, he personally helped her bathe and sleep. Before sleeping, Yi Huan put her head on his shoulder. Qin Mo lowered his head and asked her gently, "How does it feel to be a princess, Mrs. Qin?" Chapter 46:12. Before falling asleep, Yi Huan put her head on his shoulder. Qin Mo lowered his head and asked her gently, "How does it feel to be a princess, Mrs. Qin?" Yi Huan smiled gently. "It's okay." Qin Mo smiled and stroked her hair. "Go to sleep. There's an event tomorrow." Yi Huan closed her eyes and nodded. There would be a fan meeting at the biggest cinema in B City tomorrow. The main members of the crew would meet the fans. It was a small event. It would not take long, only about half an hour, but she had to be energetic. In fact, a movie had to go to a lot of cinemas. But because of her poor health, Qin Mo took it all. The only scene in B City could be considered as repaying the fans. Yi Huan wanted to sleep, but she was reluctant to do so. She leaned on Chinmo's shoulder and snorted. Chinmo, I think I have good taste. He leaned against the headboard and smiled gently. Is it me or Rongyu? Iwan didn't want to answer. A spoiled girl was willful. She closed her eyes and leaned against him. I want to sleep. Chinmo was quite tolerant. He smiled and lay flat on his back. He reached out and rubbed her fluffy hair. Go to sleep, little girl. Asterisk on the other side. Shunting did not go to Yihuan's bedroom with little Yihuan in his arms. Instead, he went back to his own room and put the little girl on the chair. He had a lot to say to her, but he was afraid that she would not understand. After all, she was still so young. Shunting squatted in front of her and touched her little head. His voice was a little hoarse. Why did you come back so suddenly? Didn't you say that you would stay for a week? Little Yihuan looked at him pitifully and whispered, The food is not delicious. Shunting was a little surprised. There should be several chefs in the Yi family. Why couldn't they make food that suited her appetite? Yihuan nodded hard. It's not delicious. I want to eat sausage fried rice. I especially want to eat it. They don't make it for me after work. Shunting was amused and annoyed at the same time. He stared at her. When Yihuan said this, she probably felt a little wronged. Her big eyes were full of tears. Shunting's heart immediately softened. If they don't know how to do it, you can ask your brother Xiangnan to do it. Brother Xiangnan won't. He will only make a bowl of noodles for me. Yihuan accused in a crisp voice. Shunting actually wanted to say that he should make a bowl of noodles, but at this moment, he forcefully swallowed it. Yihuan finished complaining and looked at Shunting. Brother, do you know how to do it? Of course, Shunting wouldn't. But now, if he said no, that little thing should be very disappointed. For example, when he looked at her now, he felt that every strand of her hair was filled with dejection. Shunting's voice was very gentle. Do you really want to eat it? Yihuan nodded vigorously. I want to eat it. They wanted to eat until they went home, but Papa accompanied Mama and didn't expect to cook the baby's favorite food. As the little girl spoke, her big eyes were full of tears again. Shunting couldn't help laughing. He reached out and pinched her face. I'll cook it for you, okay? When he said that, his tone was incredibly gentle. Yihuan looked at him suspiciously and said in a crisp voice, Brother, do you know how to cook it? Do I know how to cook it? Could it be that he knew how to look at her? Shunting cleared his throat. I'll be able to do it soon. Little Yihuan was still suspicious, so Shunting simply carried the little greedy cat downstairs. Chapter 46:13. Updated quickly. At this time, it was already late, about 10 o'clock at night. It was long past the time for a baby to sleep, but for a delicious fried rice, Yihuan was obviously working hard. Shunting carried her into the kitchen. It was a little cold in the kitchen, so he turned on the heater. Yihuan sat on the counter obediently, looking at Shunting eagerly. Shunting smiled faintly, turned to get a laptop, and began to search for sausage fried rice. Brother, so you don't know how to... Yihuan pouted unhappily and stared at him. Shunting's gaze fell on the screen, and he smiled faintly. Stop it. I'm thinking it should be delicious if you make 2 servings. Yihuan looked a little doubtful. Really? Shunting looked at it carefully and silently remembered it in his heart. Then, he looked at her and smiled faintly. Yihuan was about to faint from the electric shock. Brother is really good-looking, even more so than Brother Xiangnan under the light. Brother Xiangnan is good-looking, but sometimes he can be fierce, but Brother Shunting is very gentle. So, Yihuan is not afraid of him at all. At this moment, Yihuan didn't expect that as they grew older, Yi Xianan and Shunting were completely opposite. Yi Xianan was the gentle man that all women liked, while Shunting's face was always as cold as a mountain. It was very difficult for him to even smile. But now he was still a gentle young man who fried rice for Yihuan, and his eyes were also filled with love. Yihuan got impatient after sitting down, so she jumped down and walked around him. Shunting studied the recipe and smiled. Don't mess around. With the little fellow accompanying him, he finally cooked a plate of fried rice, but Shunting only tasted it before throwing it away. It tasted terrible. Yihuan raised her head. I didn't even eat it. It will taste better later, Shunting said, and then began to cook again. Yihuan wanted to see it, but she couldn't. She was so anxious that she wanted him to carry her. Shinting had no choice but to carry her back to the counter with one hand and look at her for a long time. His gaze made little Ihuan's heart stop beating for a moment. She stared at him for a long time. Finally, Ihuan said, "I didn't even taste it." Shinting looked at her and smiled. "Be patient." Ihuan rubbed her hands together excitedly and expectantly. "Big brother, can you really handle it?" Shinting looked at her and found a little funny. After a while, he continued to fry the second plate. He was already much more familiar with it. Because his family had high expectations of him, Shinting rarely cooked. Therefore, he didn't know how to cook ordinary fried rice. At this moment, the frying pan was slowly emitting a fragrant aroma. It was a very, very fragrant aroma. Ihuan licked her lower lip and exclaimed, "Big brother, it looks so delicious." Shinting chuckled. "Yeah, it should be very delicious." When the fried rice was done, he scooped it up and tasted it himself. "It's a little better." This time, he fed Ihuan 2 mouthfuls. Ihuan's mouth moved as she ate. "It's too delicious, too delicious." Shinting gazed at her. "It's delicious just like that?" Ihuan looked at him with her big, cute eyes. "If this isn't delicious, what else is delicious?" Shinting smiled and pinched her soft little face. "Do it again." With that said, he snatched the plate of fried rice from Ihuan's mouth and threw it into the trash can. Into the trash can. Right in front of Ihuan, he threw it into the trash can. Chapter 46:14. Ihuan was still eating half a mouthful of fried rice. When she saw Shinting pour the fried rice away, her little mouth opened wide, and she didn't make a sound for a long time. Then, tears burst out of her eyes. Bad brother. The little girl was extremely hungry. The spicy food just now was so delicious, so she was even angrier. She decided to shamelessly hug his leg from behind and beg him to pay for her meal. Her behavior was actually a little annoying for a child. After all, she was only 7 years old. However, Shinting felt an indescribable feeling. It was a little sweet. He wondered if he was a pervert to actually pamper her like this. She cried, and he coaxed her. His voice was really gentle. "All right, stop crying. There will be more delicious food in 5 minutes." Actually, it wasn't that she couldn't eat it just now. It was just that Shinting liked to brag and ask for favors. He had to do everything to the best of his ability. He neglected the fact that the little girl was extremely hungry and she was only 7 years old. He seemed to be a little too demanding. Shinting coaxed her for a long time before Ihuan licked her little mouth with tears in her eyes. She said weakly, "Then you must make it better so that I will forgive you." Shinting laughed and let her hug him as he continued to cook the fried rice. This time, even the sausages looked much better. After a while, a fragrant smell spread out. Ihuan pressed against his leg, and her voice was especially muffled. "Brother Shinting, hurry up. I'm starving to death." However, she also smelled that the fragrance was stronger than before. It smelled so good. It smelled so delicious. Ihuan was very satisfied and had the patience to wait for a while more. Shinting spent 5 minutes cooking the fried rice and put it on a plate. Because there was a little more, he divided it into 2 plates. He didn't go to the dining room. Instead, he sat at a small dining table in the kitchen. He carried Ihuan up and even tied a snow-white scarf for her. Ihuan was very satisfied and even smelled it in a very ceremonial manner. "It smells so good." As she spoke, she grinned at Shinting. "I like you the most, big brother." Shinting smiled. "Aren't you hungry? Hurry up and eat." As he spoke, Ihuan's big eyes peeked at his bowl. She asked slowly, "Brother, are you hungry too?" Children's thoughts were usually very easy to guess. How could Shinting not know? He smiled. "I'm not hungry." Ihuan lowered her head and took a few bites. Then, she looked at Shinting with a worried expression. Her expression was a little funny. Shinting chuckled and reached out to pull her hair. "There's still a lot. I don't think your belly can hold it." Ihuan raised her head and looked at him in disbelief. Shinting was still smiling. He reached out and rubbed it a few more times, looking like he was doting on it. It was probably because it was too delicious. After eating 1 plate, Ihuan still wanted more. She licked her lips and looked at Ting. Ting smiled and pushed another plate to her. Eat it, but be careful. Don't overeat. So, Yuan buried herself in eating again. But no matter how delicious it was, she still couldn't eat anymore after eating half a plate. But the rest was really a pity. Yuan tried to take 2 more bites, but she still couldn't eat anymore. Her belly was round and fell on the small dining room floor. She was so full that she couldn't even walk. Ting was amused. He glanced at her and said, "Not eating anymore." Chapter 46:15. Ting was amused. He glanced at her. "You're not eating anymore?" Yuan stared at the plate of fried rice. "Can I keep it for tomorrow?" Ting rejected it. "It's not hygienic." As he spoke, he moved the plate of fried rice over and ate quietly. Yuan squealed. "I knew you wanted to eat it, brother." Ting looked at her and smiled. "I'll fry it for you tomorrow." "Oh," Yuan replied with a look of disbelief. Ting smiled and washed the 2 plates. The back view of him washing the plates was also very nice. Little Yuan, who had eaten and drunk to her heart's content, propped up her cute little chin with her hands. She looked at big brother Ting's back and thought to herself, "Daddy is the best, bringing big brother Ting home." Brother Ting knew everything. He was like a little fairy. When Yuan called Ting that, Ting's face darkened. After a while, he said expressionlessly, "I'm a man. There are male fairies too." Yuan gestured. "Harry Potter is. He knows all kinds of magic. Isn't he a fairy?" Brother Ting knows a lot too, so he's also a fairy. Ting wanted to shit. He stared at her for a long time and finally gave up arguing with her. He picked up the little thing and walked upstairs. Yuan didn't feel uncomfortable in his hand. Instead, she raised her head happily. "Brother, do you want to sleep?" Ting lowered his head and said in a low voice, "I want to read for a while." The little fellow responded with a no, then somehow crawled along his body, hugged his neck, and buried her little face in his neck confidently. It was as if Ting was her private property. Ting lowered his head. His gaze was beyond his age. He looked at her quietly for a long time and whispered, "Why are you suddenly acting coquettishly?" Yuan hugged him. "I won't sleep either. I'll accompany you to read." Ting carried her to her bedroom and placed her on the beautiful pink bed. He squatted down and coaxed her. "Good girl, sleep early." Yuan refused. She didn't want it. Ting couldn't do anything to her. In the end, he still carried her to his room. She was small, so small that she didn't know it was unreasonable. She had Yi Xiangnan in her heart, but she was very attached to him. How he wished that she didn't know anything, but Ting sadly knew that her love for Yi Xiangnan was actually love between a man and a woman. However, he was still unwilling to give up and gamble on an unknown future. She was really too young to stay up late. He helped her wipe her little hands and face and put her under his blanket. He even thoughtfully went to find a small hot water bag and put it in her arms. Yuan felt really happy like this. She closed her eyes. "I'm asleep." Ting smiled lightly and looked at the cute little guy with a gentle gaze. She said that she was asleep. After a while, she closed her eyes as if she was really asleep. Ting called her gently twice, but she didn't respond. It seemed that she was really asleep. It was late at night, but his heart was still boiling. He couldn't forget the moment they got out of the car and the little guy threw herself at them. The surprise came so quickly. She actually came back for a bowl of fried rice. He didn't know why Yi Xiangnan didn't find a way to keep her. He could also see that the proud Yi Xiangnan wanted to keep her for a few more days. The noble boy had a touch of gentleness that only belonged to Yuan. Chapter 46:16. Ting's heart was filled with an indescribable feeling. It was a little sour, a little sad, and a little guilty. It was as if this moment was stolen. This little happiness was supposed to be Yi Xiangnan's. But there was a voice in his heart that said, "No, not necessarily. Maybe when she grows up, she doesn't want Yi Xiangnan, but me, Ting." When Ting felt that he couldn't bear it anymore, he reached out and gently touched her little face. But he immediately withdrew his hand. His face was slightly hot, as if he had done something unspeakable. Suddenly, Shunting stood up and walked to the window. He wanted to open the window, but in the end, he didn't because he was afraid that she would catch a cold. Just like that, he quietly looked out of the window for a long time before he calmed down. But when he picked up the book, his heart still wasn't calm. The words that he read turned into Ihuan's face. In the end, Shunting decided to sleep. He went to take a shower, and when he turned back, he felt that it was troublesome. Ihuan slept in his bed, so of course he couldn't sleep with her. He sighed, took a blanket, and then lay down on the sofa and covered himself. The night deepened. He smelled the sweet smell in the air. It was Ihuan's sweet smell. Shunting thought that he wouldn't be able to sleep, but when he lay down, he quickly fell asleep and slept better than ever. That night, Shunting had a dream. In the dream, there was Ihuan. When he woke up, the sky was already bright. He suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Ihuan's little face. She was still asleep, sleeping soundly on his bed. Her porcelain white face was buried in the pillow, and the ends of her short hair were exposed. She looked as cute as an angel, and she suddenly fell into Shunting's arms. He even reached out and touched his heart, as if he wanted to confirm if there was anything there. Of course, there was nothing there, only a beating heart. Shunting held his heart for a long time, and then looked at the little fellow. She was still sleeping soundly. There was no sign of him waking up. Shunting closed his eyes slightly. When he opened them again, there was something else in his eyes. He reached out his hand and gently touched her face, feeling the touch. Actually, he should have given her a good morning kiss. They were family, so it wasn't too much, but he had other thoughts in his heart, so thinking about it, he felt guilty. At least not now. At least not when she was so young. At least not when she was asleep. Under the morning light, Shunting's expression was a little repressed and restrained. However, her beauty was worth him restraining himself for many years. It was not until the year she turned 18 that she did something big. Shunting just stared at her, not realizing that he had been kneeling there for a long time. His knees were hurting. Ihuan woke up at 8 in the morning. The moment she opened her eyes, she saw Brother Shun's enlarged face. He was really good looking. Ihuan was only 7 years old, so how would she know what it meant to be reserved? She just stared straight at him, and from time to time, she would exclaim, "Brother, you're really good looking." Shunting gazed at those big eyes that were like those of a blue cat, and smiled. "You're good looking too." Ihuan found herself sleeping in his bed in his bedroom. She was a little surprised at first, but probably because the bed was too comfortable, she didn't want to move at all. Chapter 46:17. Ihuan realized that she was sleeping under his blanket in his bedroom. At first, she was a little surprised, but perhaps because the blanket was too comfortable, she didn't want to move at all. Not only did she not want to leave, she even buried her chubby little body in it like a little worm. That made Shunting laugh. He lowered his head slightly and said, "Still want to sleep?" His voice was hoarse, which was unique to boys during puberty, but it was very pleasant to listen to. Ihuan yawned and said, "I'm not sleepy anymore, but the blanket is so warm. Also, brother, why does the blanket smell so good? It smells like the sun." Shunting laughed and said, "What smell of the sun?" Ihuan blinked her big eyes and blinked. "It's the smell of the little sun. It smells so good." She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. That expression was indescribably happy, and that kind of happy expression was very infectious. At least at this moment, Shunting's heart was also very happy, and this kind of moment was extremely rare for him. He lowered his head and looked at the little person. She was so short that she was only 1/3 the length of the bed. She was so small that she looked like a small bag on the big bed. But such a small body had a lot of energy that made him happy. Shunting's hand was half hugging her little head. This overly intimate posture probably made Ihuan feel uneasy. But then she remembered that this was her brother Shunting, so she didn't move away. Instead, she placed her little head on his arm and looked at him adorably. "Ihuan, you're the little sun," Shunting said in a low voice. Qin Ihuan was Shunting's little son. When he first saw her and saw the stars in her eyes, He felt that he had found the person he had always wanted to find. But in the end, she was still too small to understand and didn't hear him clearly. "Brother, what are you saying?" Shinting smiled faintly. There was an indescribable feeling in his heart. Yes, she was too small. He reached out and gently touched her little head. He smiled and said, "I'll get up after a while." He thought for a moment, then got up and opened the white curtains. Instantly, the bedroom was filled with the blazing sun. However, none of them were as dazzling as the little thing on the bed. Shunting needed to calm himself down. He stood by the window and leaned against it, looking outside. Torture, he thought. However, he was willing to be tortured. At 8:30 a.m., both Qin Mo and He Huan got up because He Huan had an activity to attend. After tidying up, he went to check on He Huan, but she wasn't there. When he returned to Shinting's room, he saw that He Huan had occupied Shinting's bed and was rolling around happily. He Huan felt that it was inappropriate and wanted to say something, but Qin Mo patted her hand and said, "Shinting knows his limits." Then, He Huan found a small blanket on the sofa, and Shinting's clothes were still the same as yesterday. They were a little wrinkled, so she understood. She let out a soft hum and said nothing more. Qin Mo pulled her downstairs so that they wouldn't disturb the two children. The two of them ate quietly. He Huan couldn't help but say, "Qin Mo, I always feel that the two children seem to be a little too close. What do you think?" President Qin brushed her jam and bread. After handing it to her, he smiled and said, "I thought you would be happy. After all, between the two boys, I thought you liked Shinting more." Chapter 46:18. President Qin brushed her jam bread and passed it to her before smiling. "I thought you'd be happy with this. After all, I thought you'd like Shinting more between the two of you." After he finished speaking, he picked up the black coffee and took a sip. He Huan frowned. "But I'm He Huan's mother. She's still so young." Qin Mo was still holding his coffee cup. He looked up at her with a hint of a smile in his eyes. After a while, he smiled. "Then you're being picky. You want He Huan to get the best care, but you're also afraid that she'll be taken advantage of. Think about it. What can she suffer in Shinting's hands? Shinting is a very warm boy. He won't hurt He Huan. At least before she grows up, he'll know what to do," He Huan asked. "What about after she grows up?" "I don't know." Qin Mo smiled. "But in the future, even if He Huan suffers, it'll be Yi Xiangnan." As he spoke, the expression on his face changed slightly. He lowered his voice. "As for Shinting, he'll probably suffer because of her. These three kids are destined to be entangled. Actually, it might not be three. There might even be Bai Anan." In Qin Mo's eyes, Bai Anan and Shinting were actually very similar, shockingly similar. From a romantic perspective, they weren't suitable. Yi Huan was suitable for Shinting, but Shinting might not be suitable for Yi Huan. Xiangnan was suitable for Yi Huan, but with the addition of Shinting, everything would change. After Qin Mo finished speaking, Yi Huan frowned. "You make it sound so complicated." Qin Mo stretched out his hand. "Don't think about it, Mrs. Qin. This is something you should worry about 10 years ago. Now, you just need to think about your life with Mr. Qin. That's the important thing." He Huan purposely wanted to disgust him. She nodded and said, "Yeah, you're already 40. After all, you won't last long." "Is that so?" Qin Mo raised his eyebrows with a faint smile in his eyes. Under that kind of gaze, it was hard for He Huan not to blush. Breakfast was finally finished with difficulty. Qin Mo brought He Huan her coat and helped her put it on. He Huan raised her head and looked upstairs. "Should we go see He Huan again?" In Qin Lema's eyes, she looked worried. "What are you worried about?" "Shinting is taking care of her." He Huan looked at him eagerly. Qin Mo smiled again. "You're only 7 years old. What are you worried about? You can worry about it in 10 years. He Huan bit her lower lip and left with Qin Mo in the end. In the car, she made a few calls to the crew before hanging up. Qin Mo chatted with her as he drove. "Have you read the comments? Even the first female lead in Twin doesn't have as high a rating as AI Meng Meng." He Huan held her chin and sighed softly. "Yeah, I've read it too. It's a pity that she doesn't act in movies." Qin Mo's voice was calm, and He Huan couldn't tell what he meant. However, She still remembered what happened in the past and said unhappily, if you hadn't given her a shortcut back then, I think she might still be filming a movie today. Is it my fault again? Chin Imo smiled. His voice was low and pleasant. Hee-hwan couldn't help but glance at him. Chin Imo smiled again. Aren't there many handsome men in the entertainment industry? Haven't you seen enough? Chapter 46:19. Hee-hwan was furious. Let's see who's uglier. Chin Imo was driving, but he held her hand and chuckled. You're actually willing to compare me with someone else? Hee-hwan bit her lip and glanced at him. She tried to pull her hand away, but couldn't. Chin Imo held her hand for a while and let her go at the next intersection. Hee-hwan sat up straighter, her face burning. Chin Imo continued driving and suddenly laughed. Mrs. Chin, we've been married for so long. How can you still blush? Hee-hwan didn't want to listen to him anymore. He was so shameless. Luckily, they arrived at the theater soon. Chin Imo parked the car in the underground parking lot and unbuckled his seatbelt. I'll go with you. Hee-hwan turned her body. I'll be fine by myself. If you go, people will take photos of you and you'll be on the hot search list again. Chin Imo laughed. What's wrong with calling you beautiful? Mrs. Chin, it's hard to please you. Hee-hwan snorted. Really? Chin Imo got out of the car and opened the door for her. He bent down and said, I'll come down after I send you and the crew. Come find me after the event. We'll take the kids out for a day. Shinting is starting school tomorrow. Hee-hwan doesn't matter. She's just a little older than me. Chin Imo dragged Hee-hwan out of the car and adjusted her clothes. Don't take off your coat for half an hour. Hee-hwan was speechless. Chin Imo, you could be a nanny now. Fine. Even Hee-hwan doesn't have this kind of treatment. You should be satisfied, Mrs. Chin. Chin Imo pinched her chin. Hee-hwan snorted. Chin Imo just smiled and sent her to the cinema on the 4th floor. He watched her meet up with the crew before leaving with a peace of mind. Originally, Chin Imo wanted to wait in the underground parking lot and smoke a few cigarettes. Recently, he had been so busy that he didn't have time to smoke a few. However, Chin Imo gave up and chose to wait in the resting area outside. In any case, it was only half an hour. What Chin Imo didn't expect was that something would happen within half an hour. While Hee-hwan and the main cast were being interviewed together, a fan suddenly rushed up the stage. The security guards tried to stop the fan, but they failed. They thought it was just a fanatical fan, and at most, they would just force a hug or something. They didn't expect the fan to rush up and pounce on Hee-hwan. When Hee-hwan landed on the smooth marble floor, she felt the hood of her coat cushion her head. Even so, she still felt a sharp pain. Darkness followed, and a dull pain gathered in her head. Then it became blurry. She wanted to stay awake. She remembered that she wanted to say that she was fine. She remembered that Chin Imo was still waiting for her outside. But after a while, she felt a little lost. Chin Imo. Her last consciousness was filled with chaotic noises and a strong arm carrying her, calling for Hee-hwan. Hee-hwan. Chin Imo and Hee-hwan were the last two names in Hee-hwan's mind. She fainted and fell into Chin Mo's arms. Chin Imo sent her to the hospital as fast as he could and found Chin Shun. Chin Shun was the best surgeon in the world. After a series of scans, Chin Shun said to Chin Imo, there's no big problem. There's just a small blood clot at the back of her head. It won't affect her daily life, but it's pressing on her nerves, and this central nervous system affects her memory. She didn't finish her sentence. Instead, she looked straight at Chin Imo so that he could prepare himself. Chapter 46:20. Chin Imo leaned against the back of the sofa and said softly, Are you saying that she will lose her memory? It's just a possibility. Don't wait in line. The brain is the most complicated part of the human body. Everything will have to wait until she wakes up. After saying that, Chin Shun walked over and patted his older brother on the shoulder. His older brother was so miserable. This was how loving they were. Chin Imo did not say anything. He just looked up at his younger sister, or more like his younger brother. After a long time, Chin Imo suddenly put his head on Chin Shun's shoulder. Chin Shun was shocked. When did his brother become so fragile? But soon, Chin Shun understood that Chin Imo showed this side of him because he loved Hee-hwan very much. And if it wasn't for her, he would probably be pretending to be calm. Chen did not move. He quietly accompanied him for a while and then asked softly, "Second brother, do you want a cup of coffee?" Only when he was very serious would he call him second brother. Mo was silent for a while and then asked softly, "What's the worst?" Chen's voice was slightly low. "Forget you, forget Huan, forget everyone, but it won't affect my life." Mo was silent for a moment again. He actually laughed softly and said, "Won't it affect my life if I forget everyone?" It was fine if she forgot, but what about his heart? Would he have nowhere to put it? Chen knew that he was sad, but this kind of thing could not be helped. After all, it was related to the brain. It was not something that could be operated on. She could only continue to say, "If the blood clot continues to grow, we can only have surgery. If it stays the same, then, brother, it's up to you." Mo gently moved his head away and leaned against the sofa. He wiped his face and then whispered, "Make a cup of coffee for me." Chen nodded and then went to make the coffee. While she was cooking, Mo said in a low voice, "I want her to be well. As long as she's well, nothing else matters." Even if his heart was broken into pieces and had nowhere to put it, he could endure it. The only thing he could not bear was her leaving him, not being by his side, not being well. As long as she was well, even if she only had the intelligence of a 7 or 8-year-old, he would still be able to raise her. Chen didn't speak until he poured the coffee into a cup and brought it over to him. Then he said in a low voice, "It's not as bad as you think." Mo took the coffee and took a sip. Then he looked down at the coffee in the cup and smiled bitterly. Chen didn't say anything and just accompanied him. In the time it took to drink a cup of coffee, Mo had calmed down a lot. He put down the cup and said, "I'll go check on Huan." "I'll go too." Chen also put down his cup. The two of them got up and went to the VIP ward together. Huan was still unconscious and lying there quietly. Her body was already weak to begin with, and this time, her face was even paler than before. Mo's heart ached when he saw her like this. He sat by the bed and held her hand. Her hand was cold too. He still remembered holding her hand like this in the car this morning. At that time, her little hand was warm because of the hot fruit tea. Mo's brows were filled with pain as he said in a low voice, "Were you going to wake up?" He wanted her to wake up, but he was afraid that she would wake up. He was afraid that when she woke up and opened her eyes, he would see a pair of strange eyes asking him, "Who are you?" If that happened, he would probably feel a lot of heartache. However, he was also afraid that if she didn't wake up, she would never wake up again. So, if it was painful, it was fine as long as she woke up. Chen watched silently from the side and sighed in his heart. Chapter 46:21. She didn't know how to comfort her brother. She thought about it and patted his shoulder. "Should we inform our family?" Mo's back stiffened. After a long while, he said in a low voice, "Let's not tell them first. Just tell them that Huan is busy with work. If her mother finds out, she will be sad again." Actually, Mo had a kind of hope in his heart. He hoped that Huan would be fine. Even if she forgot for a while, she would remember later. There was a tinge of pain in Mo's eyes. This pain was unbearable, but he had no choice but to endure it. Chen's heart ached. "Brother, I will definitely think of a way." Mo's voice came over. "Actually, as long as she is fine, it doesn't matter." Chen didn't know what to say. When did his brother become so righteous? He didn't want mutual love and only wanted a one-sided sacrifice. When did he become so noble? Chen really couldn't believe it. Mo didn't know how much time had passed. It was probably getting dark, but Huan still hadn't woken up. Mo started to get anxious, and Chen went in and out of Huan's ward countless times. He couldn't care about other patients. But when it was 8 o'clock at night, Huan was still lying quietly without waking up. Even Mo couldn't stay calm. He quietly looked at Huan's sleeping face. He didn't know how long she was going to sleep for. He also didn't know why Huan didn't wake up. Chen said that she should wake up. If she didn't wake up, it was likely that she didn't want to wake up. This possibility made Mo very uncomfortable. Did she not want to wake up and see him? Or did she not want to live with him? He was most afraid that she had a shadow of the past in her subconscious. This was fatal to Qin Mo. He couldn't accept the fact at all. Hour after hour, He-Huan did not wake up. Eventually, Qin Shun felt uneasy and personally checked He-Huan from inside to outside. Other than the small blood clot, there were no other problems. When Qin Shun looked up, he happened to see Qin Mo. There was no expression on his face. However, the more expressionless he was, the more flustered Qin Shun felt. Everyone knew how much Qin Mo cared about He-Huan. If He-Huan didn't wake up, Qin Shun had no doubt that Qin Shun would blow up the entire Xinyuan hospital. Her diamond rice bowl would be smashed to pieces. Just thinking about it was enough for Qin Shun. Apart from that, she also felt sorry for He-Huan. After all, He-Huan was a very lovable little girl who had suffered a lot from Qin Mo. It wasn't easy for them to reconcile. Only then did they feel happy. At midnight, Qin Shun gave up for the time being and looked at Qin Mo. Qin Mo stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window and looked outside. He said in a very low voice, "Will she refuse to wake up?" Qin Shun pursed his lips. "No, you love each other so much." Qin Mo reached out to touch his forehead and said in a low voice, "I'm afraid that we haven't loved each other for too long. Now that she's asleep, her mind is filled with the image of us not loving each other. She won't forgive me and won't wake up." Qin Mo had never been so worried and fragile. It was as if the sky was falling down. Qin Shun almost didn't know how to comfort him. After a long time, he could only say in a low voice, "No, He-Huan loves you. She won't refuse to wake up." Qin Mo turned his head and looked at his sister. Qin Shun knew that he was panicking now, so he could only comfort him. "I promise she will wake up. It's just a matter of time. Maybe He-Huan is just tired." Chapter 46:22. Qin Mo just looked at her. After a long time, he murmured, "Really?" Qin Shun found it funny, but at the same time, she felt sad. When had her second brother, Qin Mo, ever been so stupid? At this moment, he must be out of his wits. That's why he behaved like this. Qin Mo almost didn't eat anything all day. Qin Shun ordered 2 meals and brought them in. In the middle of the night, Qin Mo was still guarding her without sleeping. Qin Shun's heart ached, and he said in a low voice, "Eat something. I'll keep you company. Maybe He-Huan will wake up tomorrow morning." Qin Mo said no. In the afternoon, he called back to the villa and asked Shun Ting to take good care of He-Huan. With Shun Ting around, he didn't have to worry. He was only worried about He-Huan, the little fool, and she forgot to wake up. There was a touch of pain in Qin Mo's eyes. After a long time, he slowly walked over and sat in front of the small dining table. He and Qin Shun reluctantly ate a few mouthfuls of food and put down the tableware in their hands. She didn't wake up. How could he eat? Seeing her like this, Qin Shun pursed his lips and said in a low voice, "Always eat a little. Qin Mo, there are a lot of things for you to deal with later. You're not made of iron." Qin Mo stared at the food for a while, then looked at Qin Shun and said lightly, "Watch He-Huan for a while. I'm going to smoke." He looked very calm, but Qin Shun felt a little scared. When Qin Mo was about to leave, Qin Shun couldn't help saying, "Second brother." Qin Mo turned his head and looked at her. "What's wrong?" Qin Shun suddenly felt that his mouth was dry, and his voice was a little hoarse. He-Huan will be fine. She actually wanted him to not take things too hard, because she could see that Qin Mo's nerves were already very tense, to the point where he would break at a single touch. Qin Mo frowned, looked at her quietly, and then said in a low voice, "I'm fine." As he spoke, he walked out. He walked all the way to the end of the corridor and stood there quietly. After a long time, he lit a cigarette and smoked lightly. It was not loneliness, but heartache. Qin Mo smoked alone for a long time before returning to the ward. In his heart, he more or less hoped that He-Huan would wake up in his absence, but she didn't. She lay there quietly, and Qin Shun was examining her. Qin Mo knew that Qin Shun had tried her best, so he patted her gently on the back and said, "Well, you have tried your best." Qin Shun straightened up. "Go to sleep. Maybe she will wake up tomorrow." Qin Mo comforted Qin Shun instead. Qin Shun bit her lip, and after a long time, she said in a low voice. Okay. She then said, Chinamo, you should sleep for a while too. He grunted, but in the end, he didn't say anything and just lay on the sofa. Chin stayed with him. Chinamo put his hands behind his head and kept looking at the ceiling. His voice was also very soft. Chun, do you remember when we were young and Huan came to our house for the first time? Probably thinking about it. Chin smiled slightly. Yes, she was very beautiful, even more beautiful than Chinmu. I remember that night. Chinmu cried and said that you hugged Huan instead of her, just because Huan was a little more beautiful. Chinmo smiled slightly, but his smile was a little bitter. After a long time, he said in a low voice, yes, she was very beautiful. Chapter 46:23. Chinamo smiled slightly, but his smile was a little bitter. After a long time, he said in a low voice, yes, she's very pretty. But he didn't like her just because she was pretty. Chin didn't say anything. The brother and sister each had a sofa. They said they wanted to sleep, but how could they? They lay on the floor and stared at the ceiling. For Chinamo, the night had never been so long. Also, it was hard. He wasn't a pessimist, but tonight, he thought of the worst possible outcome. In the end, he still couldn't let it go. He didn't know how to convince himself. Maybe it was because he loved her too much. He loved her so much that he thought that if he could, he would rather it never happened. He didn't love Huan. He didn't hurt her, and she didn't love him. If he didn't love her, she wouldn't have to suffer like this. She would still be fine. Maybe one day, she would meet Rongyu and have a perfect love just like what AI Meng had now. That was what Huan had once had the chance to have. And Chinamo always thought that Huan would be happier with him, but he never thought that one day he would feel that Huan would be hurt by him. He was always confident he had so much. It was glory for Huan to be with him. There was nothing he couldn't solve for her, but she was still dragged down by him. Yes, that definitely wasn't an ordinary fan. Someone who could do such a thing couldn't be ordinary. Chinamo had already sent someone to investigate. According to the news that night, that person wasn't an experienced fan at all. He was a gangster who had recently received a sum of 200,000 yuan. Chinamo felt that he knew who did this. It could not be anyone other than AI Jia. The man was already under control. Chinamo didn't have the time to care about him because he had to watch over Huan. As for the others, he would deal with them slowly in the future. For example, AI Jia. Just like that, Chinamo waited. He waited for a long time, but she still didn't wake up. Huan had been unconscious for 3 whole days. To Chinamo, these 3 days felt like 3 years or even 3 centuries. It was as long as heaven and earth. In 3 days, he had lost about 7 to 8 kilograms. He had lost a lot of weight. Chin was very worried about him because Chinamo refused to sleep from the 2nd day onwards. He didn't sleep for a whole 48 hours and kept looking at Huan. He didn't know how much time had passed, but just as he lost hope, Huan's hands moved and she slowly opened her eyes. She opened her eyes under his gaze. Chinmo's eyes were bloodshot and red from the prolonged treatment. His eyes met with Huan's. One was old and the other was pure and innocent. Chinmo remained silent. He was waiting for Huan to speak first. Finally, Huan spoke in a very soft voice. Chinmo. As soon as those 2 words came out, Chinmo felt as if all the lights in the world had lit up. His heart was filled with an indescribable feeling, as if it was about to float out. The passion made him want to hug Huan and spin her around. He also wanted to kiss her hard. It seemed like he hadn't kissed her properly in a century, but after thinking so much, he only felt tired in the end. It was as if he had been relieved of a heavy burden. After all, he hadn't slept well for a few days. He actually fell asleep next to Huan's bed. It was unexpected. Chapter 46:24. Huan was also a little stunned. She looked at Chinmo blankly, watching him sleep. He was still the same as he was in her memory, looking extremely domineering. Had he returned to China? Why was she in the hospital? Also, he seemed to have aged a lot after his trip abroad. Was it so hard to study abroad? Iwan looked around. She felt that her bones and muscles were in pain. Even the slightest movement was painful. She closed her eyes slightly. When she opened them, she looked around again, wondering why she was in the hospital. Moreover, she was with Qin Mo. At this moment, Qin Shin pushed the door open and came in. He was a little surprised as soon as he came in. Iwan was actually awake. At this moment, her eyes were as pure as a rabbit's. Qin Mo, on the other hand, seemed to be asleep. Qin Shin smiled at the door. "You're awake? Qin Mo will be very happy to know that you're awake." Iwan stared at Qin Shin. For some reason, she felt that everything was different. Qin Mo looked a lot more mature than she remembered, and Qin Shin was also different. What happened? Why did he seem different? Iwan shook her head in confusion. Her voice was also a little soft. "Qin Shin, why am I here?" Qin Shin sighed in his heart. Fortunately, she can still remember people. However, he felt that Iwan's eyes were not quite right, so he stretched out a finger. "How many is this?" Iwan was stunned. "One." "Ah." Qin Shin stretched out another finger. "What about this?" Iwan's eyes widened. She snorted. "Qin Shin, you're so stupid." The world's top surgeon's face was a little dark, but it was still worth celebrating. After all, there was nothing wrong with her little sister-in-law's brain. However, she still felt that something was wrong. Iwan was different. The look in her eyes did not look like that of a 33-year-old woman. Logically speaking, she should have been very touched to see Qin Mo guarding her when she woke up, but she didn't feel that way at all. It was as if Qin Mo was a stranger to her. Qin Shin did not specialize in the brain, but she had heard of such a thing. A person's memory was segmented. Iwan could remember them, but it did not mean that she could remember everything. Her memory might have stopped at a certain stage. However, no one knew where Qin Shin had stopped. Therefore, she asked carefully, "What's the date, Iwan?" Iwan looked at Qin Shin. "What year is it? Why did Qin Shin and Qin Mo look so much older?" Iwan suddenly felt a little panicked. Qin Shin frowned, probably knowing that his guess was right. Even Iwan could feel it. She stared into Iwan's eyes and looked at her attentively. She asked softly, "Do you know what year it is?" Iwan's face was already pale, but now it looked even paler. Her beautiful lips were pursed tightly. Then she said softly, 2004. Qin Shin cursed in her heart. What the fuck? Indeed, it was what she thought. Iwan's memory stopped at a very bad time. At that time, she and Qin Mo were not married yet. At that time, she liked Rongyu. Qin Shin screamed in her heart. Rongyu has a wife. And now it's 2019, Iwan. However, Iwan was so delicate now. How could she dare to provoke her? No matter how angry she was, she could only say calmly, "Iwan, it's 2019 now. You and Qin Mo have been married for 8 years. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.